Well, let's move on now with a look at what's making headlines here in France. I'm joined for that by Diptyque Laurent, who's been thumbing through all the newspapers for us. Hello there.
Hi, Kat.
Now, you're going to be starting off with the President, Emmanuel Macron, and his new government, which are facing a few tests in Parliament this week. Why is that?
Well, that's right. The République en Marche, or Republic on the Move party, may have the majority in Parliament as they enter Parliament this week, but they're facing stiff opposition from pretty much everyone else: the far left, the far right, the Conservatives, and former French President François Hollande's party, the Socialist Party. Now, 308 MPs from Emmanuel Macron's party will enter Parliament tomorrow, and on the agenda, the government wants to study a bill to eventually reform France's labour reforms. The Parliament will also be discussing public deficits, with a report out from France's government auditors who will be outlining what needs to be done by the country to respect its commitments to the EU. So the two key issues, clearly batons in a race for the cartoonist CAQ, as you see in this front page cartoon, batons that are legacies from the previous president, François Hollande's government. Here he is passing it on to Emmanuel Macron.
And they are batons made of dynamite.
That's
by the
right.
look of it there.
Explosive, we might say.
Okay, nice subtle message there from cartoonist CAQ. Well, talking about labour reforms, it's a very, very thorny issue here in France. I'm sure our viewers are aware of that by now. The government is going to be meeting with some of France's top labour unions today, strapping on their battle gear and helmets, perhaps.
That's right. It is a thorny issue in France, and it is very difficult to navigate the waters of union discussions, especially on this key issue of labour reforms. Well, the Minister for Labour, Muriel Pénicaud, will be leading those discussions today. They're starting from the get-go these discussions with the unions to discuss issues like financing of unions, merging the various union structures that do exist in one company under one group, and finally increasing the minimum limit of employees needed for medium-sized companies to begin layoff proceedings. Essentially, that stands at 10 right now. They want to increase it to 30, which in principle would benefit the companies more than it would the employees. These are all controversial issues, but Le Figaro says the unions, at least since Macron's election, have been pretty tight-lipped about what their demands are and what they think of the new president. And now is the time to see what their reaction will be. In any case, Macron is getting support from one writer in the right-leaning paper Le Figaro. The columnist says, for the moment, Macron is faultless in his young presidency. He's managed to, quote, put a muzzle on the unions. During his campaign, he was very open about his desire for labour reforms to move France towards a more pro-business platform. And as president, he's clearly pursuing this agenda, depriving the unions of one of their key arguments, which would have been, you're taking us all by surprise. We didn't know that you had this up your sleeve. Well, he's clearly thwarted that argument by being very open about what his desires for France are.
Indeed, and having so many members of Parliament sitting in that semicircle at the National Assembly as well. There are a lot of them. They absolutely dominate the Parliament. A lot of them are newbies, though. So Emmanuel Macron's party spent the weekend in a sort of a boot camp. Can we call it that way?
I guess we could call it a gentle political boot camp.
Not being shouted at in their faces and made to do push-ups.
Exactly. Nothing too military. As you see from this photo, it actually looks like a little weekend holiday, really. We'd say a gentle political boot camp, or Le Figaro says a weekend of integration. They were initiated into the world of politics because, remember, as you said, many of these MPs have little to no political experience. And the initiation used, I quote, the methods and practices of the business world with the goal of fostering group spirit, because a lot of them don't know each other either. As you see in this giant photo, class photo, really, the exiting MPs, Le Figaro says, will play the role of mentor to the incoming ones, telling them, helping them, I guess, navigate the cutthroat world of parliamentary politics. Former Macron minister Richard Ferrand has been named the head of the party's parliamentary group. Now, the cartoonist Willem is a little bit more critical in his view. As you see here, the French president is dishing out les éléments de langage, or propaganda, I guess is a rough translation, to his docile group of parliamentary MPs, teaching them how to speak the official language of his party and of his politics.
Well, the papers are also looking at another party that's become very, very small indeed since the parliamentary elections, the Socialists. Now, that's François Hollande's party. absolutely huge dominant party in French politics for many years, but they had a crushing electoral campaign.
That's right. They had a crushing presidential electoral campaign, followed by an even more crushing parliamentary campaign. They've had a really tough 6 months, I guess you could say. And as I mentioned, they've been positioning themselves in the opposition. The party has sort of self-destructed, and Le Figaro is asking on its front page if the historic defeat of the party has made it, quote unquote, an endangered species. Well, for L'Humanité, the Communist Party, the left, not really, because the left has no choice now but to reinvent itself and convince French voters once again that it can be a veritable political power.
All right, and finally, just got time for one last story that can be summed up in 3 words: world's longest sausage. Take it away.
World's longest sausage, created in the southeast of France yesterday. Took them 8 hours to create 1 kilometer of sausage.
A kilometer of sausage.
It doesn't look very tempting. It beat the previous record of 824 meters using a ton of meat, literally a ton of meat. The association behind the feat is called the Brotherhood of the Sausage of Savoie, a group created 13 years ago by a bunch of butchers and volunteers after a drunken night.
But apparently the Guinness Book of World Records weren't there, so it doesn't stand.
And they say they don't really care anyway.
Okay, fine. They can probably bring some of that sausage up to the breakfast team here at France 24. Thanks very much. Deux petits colorants there.